Hello, and welcome to a Path Less Travelled UK London Westminster tour. My name is Marcy, and as with all of my walking guides, the aim of this tour is to make travelling between points of interest more interesting. For the main attractions, please make full use of the guides at the sites to get the most of your visit. Before proceeding, please ensure you have listened to the introduction on YouTube or read it on the Path Less Travelled UK Facebook or Instagram pages. This will give you all the relevant information, such as important safety notices, as you are responsible for your well-being at all times on these tours. Also, don't listen to the commentary while walking. Keep alert of your surroundings and find a safe spot to stop and listen. The next photos are from Google Maps, giving an overview of the area we're covering. There are also detailed maps within each section of the commentary to assist you in finding your way around. The tour takes approximately an hour, not accounting for stopping at the sites. Please note that Westminster Abbey is not open for tourist visits on a Sunday, but is open for services, so please plan accordingly to what you wish to experience. If you are pressed for time, you can also start this tour at Westminster Underground Station instead, though you will be missing out on a lot of things that make London unique. Listen to the commentary until you hear me mention the station and follow instructions from there. Now, assuming you're up to speed on the general premise of these self-guided walking tours from the introduction video, let's begin. Today's tour is focused on the Graffiti Tunnel, the London Eye, the Houses of Parliament, Westminster Abbey, the Churchill War Rooms, and Trafalgar Square. Of course, we will be taking in lots of other little gems on the way, and a few loop options to tailor the walk to your interests as much as possible. Today's tour starts at Waterloo Station, which can be found on the Bakerloo, Jubilee, Northern, and Waterloo and City lines of the Underground. It is also attached to Waterloo Network Rail Station, which covers destinations to the south and southwest of England. If doing this tour on a weekday, and it's not too much out of your way, taking the Waterloo and City line from Bank Station to get here has a couple of added bonuses. Firstly, it was the line used to film Sliding Doors, starring Gwyneth Paltrow and John Hannah. Secondly, you get a glimpse of the original Great Head tunnelling shield that was used to construct the line at Bank. See the red painted sections in the photo. This dates from 1898, and it was common for these shields to be abandoned once the work was complete. The line is affectionately known as the Drain, and is unique in the network as it is not connected by rail to any other line, which means the trains need to be removed by crane when work has to be done on them. If you do get there by the Waterloo and City line, keep a sharp eye out for where you tap your card when exiting the line, as it is easy to miss when busy. Look out for a set of doors at the top of the stairs. The machines are either side. Shortly on your right, you will see escalators going up to mainline Waterloo Station. Go up these escalators and turn left at the top. Make your way to the Windrush Monument in front of you. Now, there are so many underground lines that go to Waterloo, you may find the escalators on the left instead. That's okay, go up them, follow the instructions from there. You may also find you exit onto the street directly. Just keep listening to the commentary and I'll let you know when we've caught up to you. But for now, let's assume you're standing by the Windrush Monument. Pause commentary until you reach there. I don't know how many people outside of Britain or the Caribbean will be familiar with the story of the Windrush pioneers, so I'll attempt to give some background to it. Many people from the Caribbean Commonwealth countries joined the British Armed Forces in World War II. When the war ended, Britain was in need of assistance to rebuild. It was then that people from these nations were invited to come to the UK to work in a range of different industries from 1948 to 1971. The sculptor Basil Watson, who also created the striking Rosa Parks statue in Montgomery, Alabama, produced this work, which was unveiled in June 2022. I think he beautifully captured the feeling of hope and resilience that the Windrush generation personifies. I hope you find it as moving as I did. When you are ready, turn with your back to the monument and make your way out of Exit 5 from the station. Once on the pavement, that's sidewalk for any North Americans listening, turn left and make your way to the corner of Cab Road and York Road. Turn left and go down to Leek Street. If you have come out of the underground exit on the opposite side of York Road, turn right and cross over York Road at the pedestrian crossing further down and continue to Leek Street, the first left. Everyone proceed to the arches at the end of Leek Street for an art exhibition like no other. Pause commentary until you reach there. The Leek Street Arches Graffiti Tunnel is an innovative art space that is constantly changing. Artists are allowed to paint over or alter other works, so it may look very different from the photos I'm sharing. I hope you find favorites of your own. I must confess that I didn't have a great appreciation for street art before coming here, but having been lucky enough to see some artists at work, my respect for it has grown. So even if you think it's not for you, I suggest you give it a try. Once finished with the tunnel, come back to this point, pause commentary until you reach here again. Now continue back up Leek Street. Turn right at the top and cross over York Road at the pedestrian crossing on the left. Go up Shisheli Street and cross over Belvedere Road, heading towards the London Eye. Pause commentary until you are just outside the ticket office entrance to the left. This may surprise you, but I am not going to recommend going on the London Eye. You are, of course, free to pause the commentary, purchase a pass, which is over £30 per adult, though sometimes you can find a discount online, and then queue, that's British term for line up, to go on the 30-minute ride. You get a nice view of the Houses of Parliament. The reason I hesitate to recommend it is normally a large investment of time and money I personally think is spent better elsewhere. Again, just my opinion. You can get a bird's eye view of London for free from Horizon 22 or the Sky Garden if desired. Pause commentary now if you wish to go on the London Eye. If not, please pause and make your way up to the Eye, turn left, and go down the pavement a bit until you can see the Houses of Parliament. The building on your left when facing Westminster Bridge is London County Hall, which used to house the Greater London Council until it was abolished in 1986. It now houses multiple attractions, including the Sea Life London Aquarium and the London Dungeon. I haven't included any of them on the tour, but if you feel inclined, check for discounted tickets online before proceeding. You will also need to be mindful of the time if you wish to see Westminster Abbey and the Churchill War Rooms. When ready, proceed straight down the pavement through the pedestrian tunnel under the bridge. After exiting the tunnel, you will soon see the National COVID Memorial Wall. Pause commentary until you reach there. I will confess that when I saw the National COVID Memorial on the map, I was expecting just a small, perhaps brass plaque, paying tribute to the thousands of people who lost their lives to COVID-19. When I came across this, with each heart representing one of the over 200,000 people in the UK lost, I will admit that it was a heart and throat moment. I only hope that lessons were learnt, so we will hopefully be better prepared if anything like this should happen again. Next, please head back towards the tunnel that you came through, but this time go up the stairs to the right. At the top, you will see a statue of a lion across the road. Don't cross, but find a spot out of the walkway to view the lion to listen to the next section. Pause commentary until you reach there. The South Bank Lion was cast in 1837 out of Coade stone, which is a highly resistant artificial stone. It was originally mounted above the nearby Lion Brewery, but had to be moved when the building was demolished in 1949 to make way for the Royal Festival Hall. It was eventually moved here in 1966, and I think serves as a majestic watcher over the bridge. We are now going to head right along the pavement, continuing down until you reach the steps on the right just past the park. Go down the steps and follow the pavement until you reach the back of this imposing statue. Have a look at the back of it and keep the commentary paused until you are standing in front of the statue. The Mary C. Cole Memorial Statue is a tribute to the Jamaican-born nurse who fought racism to be able to tend to soldiers in the Crimean War. This is the first statue to a named black woman in the UK and was designed by Martin Jennings. It was unveiled in June 2016 after some controversy. This stemmed from Seacole having no direct connection to St. Thomas's Hospital, where it is located, and Florence Nightingale having started her School of Nursing here. I say, have both. We are next going to continue towards the doors on the far side of the garden, opposite the steps that you came down. You will find statues in two very contrasting styles. Pause commentary until you are at the first statue. Cross the Divide by Rick Kirby was unveiled in September 2000. It is said to represent the union of Guy's and St. Thomas's hospitals, the grasping of hands showing cooperation and trust. If you look to your right, you will see a much smaller statue to the left of the entrance. Pause commentary until you reach there. You may be surprised to find a statue of King Edward VI, son of Henry VIII, outside a modern-looking hospital, but during his short reign he refounded the hospital in 1551. The hospital was recorded as being ancient in 1215, when it was renamed after St. Thomas Becket. Please now exit the garden by the steps you entered. Turn right at the top of the stairs and go to the pedestrian crossing at the traffic lights. Cross over Westminster Bridge Road. Turn left and walk up past the South Bank Lion and over Westminster Bridge, making sure to take photos on the way. Just before you reach the steps going down to the right, stop and move out of the walkway as best you can. Pause commentary until you reach there. I will confess that I was excited when a marker labelled the original Faraday cage popped up on Google Maps, because I thought it would give me an excuse to talk about the great 19th century scientist and father of electricity, due to his work with electromagnet induction, among other discoveries, Michael Faraday. Alas, it appears this is not a Faraday cage, but most likely a Thames tide recorder dating back to the Victorian period. Another reminder not to believe everything on the internet. Instead, look up and to the left to see the beautiful statue of the Queen of the Iceni, an ancient British tribe, Boudica. You may have heard her name pronounced Boudicca, which was apparently a favoured pronunciation by the Victorians. When her husband died, he had left his kingdom jointly to his two daughters and the Romans in 60 CE. The Romans ignored his will, and when they took over his territory, they allegedly flogged Boudica and raped her daughters. The Queen reacted as most mothers would like to in this case. She raised a rebellion and burnt down Londinium, as London was called then. For good measure, she burnt down Colchester and Verulamium, near modern-day St. Albans as well. The Romans eventually defeated Boudica's followers, and she died in around 61 CE. The uprising caused Emperor Nero to consider withdrawing from Britain, but it remained a Roman province until 410. Next, continue forward and cross Victoria Embankment, marked the A3211 on the map, when safe to do so. You will soon pass the exit from Westminster Underground Station, as mentioned before, an alternative starting point. Continue down the road, crossing Cannon Row, and take the pedestrians crossing immediately after that on the left. Once across, walk down the street past the gates going into the Houses of Parliament until you are away from the worst of the crowds, but you can still see the clock tower and Churchill's statue. Pause commentary until you reach there. The Palace of Westminster, commonly known as the Houses of Parliament, is the heart of government in the United Kingdom. There are two legislative chambers, the House of Commons with elected members, and the House of Lords, which since 2000 can be recommended by an independent public body, or peerages can be given to MPs retiring from the Commons, for example. The building itself primarily dates from after a fire in 1834, when both houses were destroyed. Though King William IV offered Buckingham Palace to the government, such was his dislike for the place, it was deemed unsuitable. The perpendicular Gothic revival design by Charles Barry was chosen for the new palace, though he relied heavily on Augustus Pugin for the details. There has been a royal residence or seat of government here since at least Edward the Confessor, 1045 to 1050, and possibly as far back as King Canute, 1016 to 1035. The clock tower, which many of you have probably called Big Ben up to this point, is in fact the Elizabeth Tower, renamed for the Queen at her Diamond Jubilee in 2012. The name, Big Ben, actually refers to the largest of the bells in the tower that makes the deep ringing tone on the hour. There are 5 bells in total. The tower stands at 96 meters, or 316 feet high, and was completed in 1859. If you turn around so Parliament is behind you, look towards the green space in front of you. On the corner to the right, you will find the statue of arguably Britain's most famous Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill. Most people know he was Prime Minister during World War II, and as we will soon be at the Churchill War Rooms, I won't dwell on that now. He also served as Prime Minister from 1951 to 1955. He was awarded a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1953. When he retired from being a Member of Parliament in 1964, he spent some of his time at his home in Chartwell, Kent, where you can still see his painting studio. He was one of the very few individuals outside the royal family to have a state funeral when he died in 1965. Though, being a modest man at heart, he is buried in a small churchyard in Bladon. We're now going to continue to walk down Abington Street, marked the A3212 on the map, with the Houses of Parliament on your left. You will be able to make out a statue of Oliver Cromwell through the railings, but as you can see him more clearly from the other side of the road, we'll save his story for later. When you reach a car park on the left, look for a statue of a king holding his sword above his head. Pause commentary until you reach there. This is a statue of King Richard I, or Richard the Lionheart, who reigned from 1189 to 1199. If the name rings a bell, it could be from his association with the legend of Robin Hood. I find it a rather strange choice out of all the kings and queens to have Richard I outside Parliament, as he was only in England for 6 to 10 months of his 10-year reign. He liked going on crusade to the Holy Lands, and when returning from his 3rd crusade, he was captured by Duke Leopold V of Austria. He was then handed over to the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI, and the conditions he was kept in were far from luxurious, including being heavily chained that had Richard proclaim that a horse or ass would have struggled to move under them. Though Richard's mother, the formidable Eleanor of Aquitaine, worked tirelessly to raise the ransom, the King of France, Philip, and Richard's brother John offered a bribe to Henry VI to keep Richard longer. Richard was only released after the ransom of approximately £100,000 of silver was paid, which was 2 to 3 times the annual income of England in that period. Continue down the street, past the end of the Houses of Parliament, and you will come to an opening on the left to the Victorian Tower Garden South. You will see a statue of a woman just inside the entrance. Pause commentary until you reach the statue. Emmeline Pankhurst, who was the founder of the group Women's Social and Political Union, was a key force in the suffragette movement. Their slogan, "Deeds Not Words," was acted out in militant tactics, and they would sometimes go on hunger strikes after being arrested. Whether you agree with her methods or not, it is tragic that after all her efforts, Emmeline only partially realized her dream of women's right to vote in her lifetime. In 1918, all men over 21 and women over 30 were given the right to vote. The reason for the difference was Parliament didn't want men's votes outnumbered after so many men had died in the First World War. The right for both men and women to vote from 21 years old was passed on the 2nd of July, 1928, just a few weeks after Emmeline died at 69 years old. She is buried in Brompton Cemetery in West London, which is covered in one of my other tours. Please turn right next if facing the statue and head up the park path a short way. To the left you will see a statue on a plinth of a group of men. Pause commentary until you are standing next to this statue. I'll admit that I almost didn't bother coming to see this statue, as the title, "The Burghers of Calais," didn't grab my attention. Even at a distance, however, I couldn't fail but notice the sculptor's distinctive style with oversized hands. Sure enough, it is by Auguste Rodin, most famous for the statue called The Thinker. Incidentally, if you're going to Paris, I highly recommend Musée Rodin, if only to see the Gate of Hell sculpture. Back to the burgers, though. This is one of 12 castings by the artist and depicts the end of the siege of Calais in northern France in 1347. The forces of King Edward III had eventually starved the French troops into surrender, giving the English a stronghold in France for the remainder of the 100 Years' War and beyond. Calais would not be recaptured by the French until 1558. Please take a few moments to walk around the sculpture and appreciate the work of a true master. When ready, please return to the path you were just on, but turn left. A short way down on the right, you will see an exit from the park. Go through and turn right onto Millbank. You can admire Millbank House across the street as you make your way to the pedestrian crossing. Cross over Millbank when it is safe to do so and turn right, crossing Great College Street. Take the path through Abingdon Street Gardens, stopping when you reach the point on the path near the large modern sculpture in the centre. You can also see another side of Millbank House from here with its quirky windows. Pause commentary until you reach there. Knife Edge by Henry Moore was gifted to the nation in 1967. Moore wanted to be a sculptor from a young age, but it was only after receiving an ex-serviceman's grant at the end of World War I that he was able to realize his dream. From his humble beginnings in a Yorkshire mining town, he eventually had sculptures in major cities all over the world, including a reclining figure for UNESCO headquarters in Paris and another at the Lincoln Center for Performing Arts in New York. Next, continue down the path through the park, and at the end you will see a stone tower on your left. Pause commentary until you reach there. The Jewel Tower is one of only 2 buildings that survived the fire that destroyed the Palace of Westminster in 1834. It was built in the 14th century to hold the treasures of King Edward III. Though it has an interesting exhibition and a model of what the palace would have looked like in the 14th century, I haven't officially included it on the tour due to time constraints. I see it as a second visit place to go. You are, as always, free to pause the commentary and partake of the tower if you wish. Return to this spot afterwards to go on to the next point of interest if you do so. We are next going to continue down Abingdon Street until you reach the statue of King George V, the great-grandfather of King Charles III. The building behind George V is part of Westminster Abbey, so you may wish to take a few shots from this side while you're here. In front of the statue, within a mini car park, is the Golden Jubilee Alnematic sundial. Pause commentary until you are on the pavement near the sundial. Making sure there is no traffic, you can stand in the appropriate spot in the inner circle of the sundial, and your shadow will show the current time, though make allowances for British summertime. Designed by Quentin Newark, it was a gift from Parliament to Queen Elizabeth II on her Golden Jubilee in 2002. The quote is from Shakespeare's Henry VI, Part 3. To carve out dials quaintly, point by point, thereby to see the minutes, how they run. How many makes the hour full complete? How many hours brings about the day? How many days will finish up the year? How many years a mortal man may live. Continue down Abingdon Street, and when you pass the gate on the left that is the end of John Street, find a spot to stop and listen about Oliver Cromwell. Pause commentary until you reach there. If you look across the street above the railings around the Houses of Parliament, you will see the statue of Oliver Cromwell, best known as Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland and Ireland, after the defeat of King Charles I in the Civil War. Cromwell was one of the signatories on Charles I's death warrant in 1649, and we will be seeing where the execution took place later in the tour. During his time as Lord Protector, the Feast of Christmas Day was abolished, and he brutally suppressed the Catholics in Ireland as punishment for their support of the Royalists in the Civil War. After he died in 1653, his son Richard succeeded him, but he didn't have his father's force of will. This ultimately led to the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, when King Charles II took the throne. It seems Charles II wanted to make up for the oppressive Puritan years, which is how he earned the nickname the Merry Monarch. Please continue down to the corner of Abingdon Street and Parliament Square and turn left. The church you will walk past on the left is the 12th century St. Margaret's Church, which, along with being a lovely parish church, was where Sir Winston Churchill married Clementine Hosier, great name, in 1908. Notable burials include Baroness Blanche Perry, who was chief gentlewoman to Elizabeth I and died in 1590. Sir Walter Raleigh, who helped defeat the Spanish Armada and played a leading part in the English colonization of North America, was buried here in 1618 after being executed near the church. This was done to appease the Spanish after an attack on a Spanish outpost by his men, which was a violation of a 1604 peace treaty. If the church is open when you enter the grounds of the Abbey, it is worth having a look around. Before all that, we need to get you into the Abbey grounds. Once past the church, please pause in sight of the north side entrance to take a few photos and listen to the next section of commentary. Continue down Parliament Square, and as the road bends to the left and becomes Broad Sanctuary, you will see the Sanctuary Street on the left. Just before that on the left is the top of John Street. Follow that to the gateway in front of you. That will lead you to the Abbey entrance and St. Margaret's Church. Pause commentary until you are through the gate and queuing to enter the Abbey. While you are waiting to enter the Abbey, I'll just give you a brief overview of a couple of my favourite things to look out for, as they have audio guides available which are very good at pointing out the highlights. I should mention that the entrance fee was £27 per adult at the time of recording, but there is over 1,000 years of history in that fee. Always up to you, of course, but the Abbey is one of the top 3 things I would recommend seeing in London, if that counts for anything. I would allow at least 2 hours for your visit. There has been a church on this site since at least 959 CE, when Benedictine monks set up an abbey here. The church increased in size under King Edward the Confessor, who was buried here in 1066. Since that time, it has been the site of 40 English and British coronations and at least 16 royal weddings, including the current Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine. The numerous royal burials will be on the audio tour, but make sure when you are approaching the Henry VII Chapel, you turn left at the top of the stairs into the subchapel. In the center, you will find the tomb of Elizabeth I and her half-sister Mary I, though only Elizabeth is depicted on the tomb. Just past their tomb at the end of the subchapel is Innocent's Corner. If you have been on my City of London tour, you may recall the story of the Princess in the Tower. For everyone that is unfamiliar, King Edward V and his brother Richard, Duke of York, disappeared while their uncle Richard III claimed the throne for himself. Many years later, the bodies of 2 young people were discovered near a stairwell in the Tower of London. Those bones are contained in an urn in Innocent's Corner under their name. There has been no testing on the bones to see if they actually could be the princes, but I think whatever happened to cause those 2 children to be buried in secret makes them worthy of their grand interment in the Abbey. Other items to look out for are what is believed to be Britain's oldest door, dating from the 1050s, and if it is open, make sure to go to the museum, which has a wealth of information not only about the history of the Abbey, but royal funereal practices through the ages. Make sure to have a look around Poets' Corner to see how many names you recognize. I will mention that though there is a monument to William Shakespeare here, he is actually buried in the beautiful Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon. Last, but certainly not least, as you approach the exit, you will see the tomb of the unknown warrior. This was a soldier brought back from the fields of France in World War I, who could not be identified. He was chosen to represent all of the unidentified casualties of war and was buried with the highest honors in 1920. American visitors will want to look for the Congressional Medal of Honor that was awarded and is hanging in a frame on a pillar nearby. My favorite story about Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, is when she married the future King George VI in 1923. As she was leaving the Abbey, she left her bouquet by the unknown warrior's tomb as a mark of respect. Once you have exited the Abbey and had a look around the gift shop to the left, make your way to the Crimea and Indian Mutiny Memorial opposite, taking care when crossing the sanctuary, as it is an active roadway, to take photos of the Abbey. Pause commentary until you reach there. From here, we have a quick loop option. If you'd like to see a rarely seen view of the Abbey and some more historic buildings, pop through the archway to your right when looking at the Abbey and enter the Dean's Yard. Pause commentary until you reach there. The Dean's Yard was formerly the monastery farmyard. Today, it is home to Westminster School, Westminster Abbey Choir School, and various church offices. It hasn't changed much since the 18th century, except this rather splendid tree has continued to grow. We're now going to go back down Broad Sanctuary until you reach the pedestrian crossing that goes onto a triangular traffic island. Cross over and then cross to the right when safe to do so. Pause commentary until you reach the statue of Nelson Mandela in Parliament Square. If you don't already know who Nelson Mandela is, I doubt I can do proper justice to him and his legacy in a few short lines, but I shall try. Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid activist, and following a sabotage campaign against the government, he was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1962. After growing international pressure, he was freed in 1990. He then led efforts with the then president to end apartheid, which resulted in the 1994 multiracial general election, which Mandela, at the head of the African National Congress Party, won. He was president until he retired in 1999, but continued to be an activist, particularly ensuring HIV-positive South Africans had access to antiretrovirals through the Treatment Action Campaign. I could honestly go on about his achievements all day, but I'll leave it up to you if you wish to find out more about this great man. Next, please make your way about a dozen steps along the path to the statue of Mahatma Gandhi. Pause commentary until you reach there. Gandhi's name is synonymous with non-violent resistance and civil rights. He assumed the leadership of the Indian National Congress in 1921 and led campaigns to ease poverty, build ethnic and religious amity, improve women's rights, and achieve self-rule. The latter was not realized until 1947. Sadly, on the 30th of January 1948, while on his way to a prayer meeting, he was assassinated by a militant Hindu nationalist that felt Gandhi had defended both Indian and Pakistan Muslims too much. Over 1 million people joined the 5-mile funeral procession. Please go down the path another dozen steps until you reach the statue of Millicent Garrett Fawcett. Pause commentary until you reach there. Dame Millicent Fawcett was leader of the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies from 1897 to 1919. She also sought to expand women's access to higher education as governor of Bedford College, now Royal Holloway, and co-founding Newnham College, Cambridge, in 1875. She was the first woman to have a statue in Parliament Square in 2018. Turning right at the end of the path, pause at the statue of the former Prime Minister David Lloyd George, the only Welshman to ever hold the office, to take a rather dramatic shot with the Elizabeth Tower. You can continue on to take a similar shot with the back of Winston Churchill's statue. When finished, retrace your steps back to the corner of the square you just turned right at and cross Parliament Square to the right at the pedestrian crossing. You may see a large queue of people to the right. This is for the K2 telephone boxes to take a photo with phone booth and the Elizabeth Tower together. Only you can judge if it's worth your time and effort. Whatever you decide, continue to the corner of Parliament Street and turn left. Continue down to the first street you reach on the left, King Charles Street. Pause commentary until you reach there. Here is a loop option to visit the Churchill War Rooms. If you are not visiting, please listen to the commentary until I say that the people returning from it are turning left onto Parliament Street. At that point, cross King Charles Street and follow the instructions from there. The arch in front of you was designed by J.M. Bryden and Henry Tanner, with sculpture by William Silver Firth. The sculpture is said to represent the government on the left and shipping and navigation to the right. It was completed in 1908 and made to link two government buildings together. Pass under the archway and go to the very end of King Charles Street, down the steps and turn left. There you will see the entrance to the Churchill War Rooms. Pause commentary until you reach there. In 1938, work began to convert a basement in the new public offices to a secure centre to be used as a central war room. It became operational on the 27th of August 1939, only a week before Britain declared war on Germany. The Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, would meet with heads of the Army, Navy and Air Force here, as well as hold cabinet meetings. He was encouraged to sleep here when London was under threat of an air raid, but would often sneak back out. The building was preserved to how it was at the end of World War II and is a must for anyone with an interest in military history. I would allow at least 90 minutes for your visit. Please pause the commentary, and when you exit the building further down Horse Guards Road, turn right and return to this spot. Please go up the stairs and go back up King Charles Street on the left-hand side. At the end, turn left onto Parliament Street, and you will soon see the cenotaph on the central reservation of Parliament Street. Pause commentary until you have a good view of it without crossing the road. The cenotaph, which means empty tomb in Greek, is a World War I memorial that was unveiled on the 11th of November 1920 to serve as a point of remembrance for all those that died and had no known grave. There is an annual national service of remembrance here every November to acknowledge the contribution of not only British but of Commonwealth military and civilian personnel in the two world wars and all conflicts since. Please now continue a short way down Parliament Street to some high black iron gates on the left, probably with a crowd in front of them and police officers nearby. Pause commentary until you reach there. This is Downing Street, and number 10 is the traditional home of the Prime Minister since 1735. It is nearly impossible to get anywhere near it for obvious reasons, but if you want to fake it, the doorfront of 7 to 10 Adam House on Adam Street near the Strand looks almost identical. This is not officially included on the tour, but I give directions to it near the end for those that wish to partake. If you continue down Parliament Street, which is now called Whitehall, streets do that a lot in London, you will see the Women of World War II monument on the central reservation. Pause commentary until you find a place to stop and have a good view of it. The Women of World War II memorial was unveiled in 2005. It depicts 17 different types of uniform to show the wide range of roles carried out by the 7 million women that contributed to the war effort. It was designed by John W. Mills, who was a child evacuee during the war when his mother joined the fire service. It is meant to show that many women were forced to abandon their jobs when the men returned home from the front. Please now continue up Whitehall until you see the Field Marshal Earl Haig Memorial and the building behind it. Pause commentary until you reach there. The banqueting house is the last remaining part of Whitehall Palace. The palace had been a favourite of Henry VIII's, and he married 2 of his wives here and died here years later. This portion of the palace, though, was designed long after Henry's reign in 1622. The architect, Inigo Jones, is also responsible for the Queen's House in Greenwich. The most outstanding feature is the grand ceiling painted by Rubens, but sadly the house is temporarily closed at the time of recording and can only be visited on special tours. It was outside of the banqueting house on the 30th of January 1649 that King Charles I was executed after his forces had lost the Civil War. It is said that he requested to wear 2 shirts so that him shivering from cold would not be misinterpreted as fear. As his execution was not universally supported, he was quietly buried at Windsor Castle 2 weeks later. Next, please proceed a few steps up Whitehall and admire the Royal Horse Guards. Nice place for a photo, I'm sure we'll agree, but please remember these are working military personnel. Do not touch them or the horses, especially the reins. Follow any instructions they give you. There are officers nearby to deal with anyone not behaving appropriately. That said, they are usually willing to have the public stand with them for photos, so please don't let my warnings put you off. I just don't want your day to take an unpleasant turn. The Royal Horse Guards was formed in 1650 on the orders of Sir Oliver Cromwell. There is a household cavalry museum on site for anyone with a particular passion for the regiment. It costs £10 per adult at the time of recording and includes a peek in the stables. Pause commentary until you have finished with the Horse Guards. Please next cross at the pedestrian crossing in front of the banqueting house and proceed straight down Horse Guards Avenue. On the opposite side of the road, just before Whitehall Court, you will see the Gurkha soldier statue. Pause commentary until you are in sight of the statue without crossing the road. The Gurkhas are highly respected fighting men from Nepal. They were recruited by the British Army from 1815 as they were highly respected for their military tactics. There are still 4,000 Gurkhas working today. Behind you is the Ministry of Defence building. The sculptures above the entrance, Earth and Water, are by artist Sir Charles Wheeler. The staff in the 1950s nicknamed the statues Mr. and Mrs. Parkinson, after the Board of Trade civil servant, Cyril Parkinson, devised Parkinson's Law, which claims that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Cyril obviously didn't have the workload I had in college. Please continue down Horse Guards Avenue, past the Ministry of Defence, and enter the park at the opening on the right. You will pass Queen Mary's Steps on the right, proof that anything Sir Christopher Wren designed is treated as sacred. That's a little in-joke for those who have done the St. Paul's to Covent Garden tour. Take the path to the left towards Air Marshal the Viscount Portal's statue, and turn left, exiting the park through the opening, but not crossing the road. Pause commentary until you reach there. Another confession, I have brought you here primarily because I really like how the Royal Air Force Memorial lines up with the centre of the London Eye. If you would like to see the memorial up close, feel free to make your own mini loop, pause the commentary, turn left, walk up Victoria Embankment, take the pedestrian crossing to the right. There is also another mini loop option. Instead, turn right when facing the London Eye and cross Richmond Terrace, and you can see the famous revolving New Scotland Yard sign, home of the Metropolitan Police, as featured in countless British TV shows. Sorry I didn't get a photo. Everyone then proceed to the corner of Victoria Embankment and Horse Guards Avenue when you have finished with your loops, if any. Pause commentary until you reach there. We are next crossing Horse Guards Avenue at the pedestrian crossing and turning left. A few steps up the road, you will see an opening to a park on the right. Pause commentary until you are just inside the park. This is Whitehall Gardens, which until I researched this tour, I was blissfully ignorant of. Now I will make a point of detouring here whenever I am in the area. Though London is blessed with many green spaces, I think we can agree that this one has gone the extra mile in terms of landscaping. The first statue you come to is for William Tyndale, who was the first translator of the New Testament of the Bible from Greek into English, completing it in 1525. He published in Cologne, Germany, and the first copies were smuggled into England the following year, where they were initially forbidden. Pause commentary until you are at the second statue. This is a tribute to Henry Bartle Frere, who was Governor of Bombay from 1862 to 1867 and High Commissioner of South Africa from 1877 to 1880. While attempting to implement British Confederation on the region, it set off rebellions, coming to a head with the invasion of Zululand in 1879 and the First Boer War in 1880. Prime Minister Gladstone brought Frere back to Britain to face charges of misconduct, and he was officially censured for acting recklessly. While preparing his vindication for his actions, he died in 1884 and is buried in St. Paul's Cathedral. The Prince of Wales unveiled this monument to him in 1888, but I must confess I'm mystified as to why. Pause the commentary until you are at the third statue, taking in this rather cool tree on the way. Lieutenant General Sir James Outram, 1st Baronet, fought in the Indian Rebellion of 1857. He received much praise and honours for defeating the Persian forces in February 1857 during the Anglo-Persian War. He is buried in Westminster Abbey under the epitaph, "The Bayard of India." We next have another loop option, but it will very much depend on when you are doing the tour. The Benjamin Franklin House is the only home of his still to be in existence, but is only open Friday, Saturday, and Sundays for limited periods. Please check their website, benjaminfranklinhouse.org, to confirm. It is a 5-story townhouse, so please take that into consideration as well if you have mobility issues. I would allow at least an hour for the tour. To get there, exit the park by taking the path to the right when facing the last statue and exit out the gate. Cross the pedestrian crossing in front of you to the other side of Northumberland Avenue and turn left. Walk up, carefully crossing Embankment Place, and take the right fork in the road that is Craven Street. The house is further up on the right-hand side. Incidentally, you will pass the former homes of Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, and Heinrich Heine, the German poet, on the way. When finished, make your way back down Craven Street a few steps and turn right, carefully crossing the road when safe to do so, and go down Craven Passage. At the end, turn sharp left and take the crossing to the right over Northumberland Avenue. Turn left, and almost immediately you should see Great Scotland Yard. Turn right into this street and go down until you can see Scotland Place, a road on the left. Pause commentary until you reach there. Everyone else, go around the back of the statue of James Outram and exit the park through the side gate. Turn left, carefully cross Whitehall Place, and walk up Northumberland Avenue on the left-hand side until you reach Great Scotland Yard. Go down the road until you reach the intersection with Scotland Place. Pause commentary until you reach there. The Metropolitan Police Headquarters is referred to as Scotland Yard as it used to be located on this street, though their address was officially 4 Whitehall. The name is thought to derive from the Kings of Scotland lodging in this area when visiting court in the Tudor period, making it an unofficial embassy. The name was certainly in use when Henry VIII's sister, Margaret Tudor, Queen of Scots, stayed there. In the 17th century, architects Inigo Jones and Sir Christopher Wren lived here, as well as the poet John Milton. The real reason I brought you to this corner, though, is it's a film location for, you guessed it, Harry Potter. On the corner in front of you is where Harry and Arthur Weasley enter a telephone booth, which was brought in for filming, to enter the Ministry of Magic at the beginning of the Order of the Phoenix when Harry is going to his trial. Continue down Great Scotland Yard and turn right at the end onto Whitehall, crossing carefully if required. At the top of Whitehall, cross at the pedestrian crossing to the left, turn immediately right while on the triangular island, and cross the pedestrian crossing to the large traffic island with the statue of a man on a horse. Pause commentary until you reach there. In front of you is a statue of King Charles I. Yes, the king that was executed down the street. It was cast during his lifetime, and after the Civil War, it had been sold to a metalsmith to be melted down, but for whatever reason, he hid it instead. It was installed here in 1675 after the restoration of the monarchy. Previously, the Charing Cross was on this site from 1291 to 1647, but I'll tell you more about that later when you see the replica. In front of Charles, you can hopefully see this plaque on the ground. It marks the official centre of London. So if a city is listed as being X number of miles or kilometres from London, it is measured from this spot. How's that for a bit of trivia? Next, please take the pedestrian crossing to the left if you are standing with your back to the front of the statue. On the traffic island, turn right and cross at the pedestrian crossing to Trafalgar Square. Pause commentary once you are in the square but out of the main walkway. Trafalgar Square was once the mews or stables for Buckingham Palace, but the area was redesigned by Charles Barry in the 1840s. It was created following the victory over the French and Spanish fleet in October 1805. The battle ended Napoleon's hopes of invading Britain. The hero of the war, Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson, was killed during the conflict. The tall column in the square is Nelson's column in his honour. The square has many quirky features, such as Britain's smallest police station in the southeast corner, made from a hollowed-out light fitting, which I sadly forgot to photograph on the day, to the fourth plinth in the northwest corner, which has changing art exhibits, as it couldn't be decided what should go there. The other three plinths are taken up by King George IV, General Sir Charles James Napier, and Major General Sir Henry Havelock, both associated with British rule in India. The lions were added in 1867, and the dolphins and mermaids in the fountains in the 1930s. The square was pedestrianised in 2003 and is often full of street performers as well as the famous pigeons. It is surrounded by Canada House, St. Martin's in the Fields, and the National Gallery. I deliberately haven't included the gallery or the National Portrait Gallery behind it, as I intend to give them the attention they deserve on another tour. So, once you have finished with Trafalgar Square, please make your way up the steps towards the National Gallery, but turn right at the top. Go to Charing Cross Road and cross at the left-hand pedestrian crossing and stop when you reach the steps of St. Martin's in the Fields Church. Pause commentary until you reach there. There has been a church on this site since at least the 1220s. It was surrounded by fields at the time, hence the name. The current building dates from 1726 and was designed by James Gibbs. It has been replicated in many locations throughout the world. The church was involved in the anti-apartheid movement and founding of charitable organizations such as Shelter for the Homeless, Amnesty International, and The Big Issue. They also care for approximately 7,500 homeless people every year. If the church is open and not hosting a service, it is worth popping in to admire the unique window designed by Iranian artist Shirez Hosuri, which depicts a cross as seen reflected on the water. It was commissioned to replace the window damaged by bombs in World War II and was installed in 2008. If the church is not open, you can still catch a glimpse of it at the rear of the church when we make our way to our next stop. Pause commentary until you are ready to leave St. Martin's. When ready, exit the church the way you entered and turn left, making your way down the steps. Turn left onto Duncannon Street and, after briefly admiring the back of the church, cross at the pedestrian crossing to the right. Go straight and cross at the second pedestrian crossing. Stay to the right-hand side and don't stray into the road exit from Charing Cross, as those taxis can come out at great speed when the light is green. Follow the pavement around to the station entrance, but don't enter. Make sure you have a good view of the Charing Cross replica in the car park. Pause commentary until you reach there. In 1290, Queen Eleanor of Castile, the consort of King Edward I, died in Harley, Nottinghamshire, at the age of 49. The grief-stricken king arranged a 21-day funeral procession to take her body to be buried at Westminster Abbey. 12 crosses, or markers, were erected at places where the procession rested, the original Charing Cross being at the site of the Charles I statue, as I mentioned. This replica, though not a faithful reproduction, as it is more ornate, was placed in 1863 to pay homage to the history behind the name of this area of London. Next, continue across the front of Charing Cross Station to the steps on the far side. Go down the steps and turn right. Go down Villiers Street, keeping an eye on the left for the entrance to Victoria Embankment Gardens. Enter and follow the path around to the left until you are in sight of York Watergate. You'll see the green flag at the top of John Adams Street on the map. That is Adam House, which has the door similar to 10 Downing Street. If you do go there for a photo, please remember to respect the property and its inhabitants. When finished, come back to Villiers Street and turn left. Pause commentary until you reach York Watergate. It is hard to imagine it now, but where you are standing was once in the river. This gate was used by the Duke of Buckingham from 1626 as a private place to moor his boat. The Thames Embankment was constructed in the mid-19th century, which, of course, made the gate redundant. Exit the gardens the way you entered and turn left. In front of you is Embankment Underground Station, which is on the Circle, District, Bakerloo and Northern lines. This is the end of the tour. I sincerely hope you have enjoyed it and will join me again on A Path Less Travelled UK soon.